As we noted in yesterday's video, the total number of troops within the Rebel Alliance accounted for just 3.5% of the military forces comprising the ranks of the Empire. However, despite the overwhelming power of the Imperial military, the Rebellion still managed to develop an army doctrine that allowed them to wage a successful ground war against the Empire. Over time, as the Alliance learned from its mistakes, the evolution of its strategy allowed them to achieve victory in the Galactic Civil War. The Fleet and Starfighter Doctrine of the Rebellion would also see a similar evolution in tactics and strategy that was the product of the Rebel Alliance's access to vessels and their overall aims in taking down the Imperial Order. Given that they only possess 7% of the space-going forces relative to the Imperial fleet strength, the doctrine developed by the Rebellion was crucial to their war effort against the Empire. In this video expose, we'll look at the evolution of the Rebellion fleet and Starfighter Doctrine, and examine the tactics adopted by the Alliance both prior to the Battle of Yavin and throughout the Galactic Civil War that allowed the much smaller Rebellion to wage war against the Empire. As the ground tactics of the Rebellion shifted to a focus upon the Alliance Special Forces, Starfighter Command began to emerge as the dominant branch of the Rebel Alliance in the pre-Yavin period. The catalyst for this development was the rise of Jan Dodonna within the Rebel military. In Dodonna, the Rebellion had a military commander who promoted the view that starfighters should be a separate arm of the military and the dominant force in the Rebel war efforts against the Empire. The reason for this view was sound. Dodonna saw tremendous value in utilizing hyperspace-capable starfighters to appear out of nowhere and without warning to quickly raid Imperial convoys, assault Imperial bases, and strike at the Empire's star destroyers. Even better, the hyperspace capabilities of these starfighters allowed for assaults without the support of capital ships, which the Rebellion lacked. Fortunately for Dodonna and his starfighter-dependent strategy, the Rebellion had access to the perfect starfighters for such a role. In the era before the Battle of Yavin, the X-Wing starfighter developed into the primary weapon of the Alliance. That the X-Wing fell into Rebel hands and not the ranks of the Empire was a fortunate stroke of luck. Upon hearing that the Empire planned to nationalize the company, the Incom Corporation's scientists, designers, and engineers defected, escaping with the plans and prototypes for the X-Wing and wiping their systems of all references to the starfighter before they fled. Rebel raids upon the corporation's facilities ensured that the entire stock of already produced X-Wings fell into their hands, and the blueprints for the starfighter were given to them and not the Empire. With their acquisition of the X-Wing and the connections to have more manufactured, the Rebellion had the best starfighter in the galaxy to carry out Dodonna's strategy. Coupled with the acquired X-Wings that began to flow into the ranks of the Rebellion from sympathetic planetary security forces and raids on Imperial depots, the Rebels had the starfighters they needed to begin implementing their doctrine and hit Imperial targets. Dodonna's Starfighter Doctrine was quickly proven to be perfectly suited for the Rebellion. Raids against Imperial targets were conducted across the galaxy. Rebellion Y-Wings defeated starfighter fleets at Denab, inflicting heavy Imperial casualties. At the same time, squadrons of X-Wings destroyed Imperial shipyards and capital ships, while decimating the inferior TIE fighter in the Fi-Hu campaign, where the Empire suffered 282 destroyed TIEs to only 4 X-Wing losses. The starfighters of the Rebellion quickly earned their reputation as Dodonna's doctrine paid off. Of course, all of this culminated in the starfighters of the Rebellion destroying the first Death Star. The Fleet and Starfighter Doctrine of the Rebellion appeared to be well entrenched within Alliance High Command, as it was difficult to argue with its success. However, there were a number of disasters that would befall the Rebellion in the immediate aftermath of Yavin that would create a significant evolution from a doctrine focused upon starfighters to one dependent upon an expanding Alliance fleet of capital ships and a formidable battle line. The withdrawal of the Corellian leadership and the loss of Dodonna as a prisoner of the Empire following Yavin certainly altered the character of the struggle. So too did the emergence of fleet command within the Rebellion. Although the success of their starfighter tactics led Rebel commanders to distrust cruiser and capital ship warfare, there were still those high up in the Rebel hierarchy that insisted upon building a battle line consisting of capital ships. Chief among them was Mon Mothma. But no single event changed the face of the Rebellion's fleet in Starfighter Doctrine than the disaster at Deep Space Besh, 9 months after the Battle of Yavin. Having obtained the location of the bulk of the Rebel fleet, Darth Vader wished to crush the Rebellion in one decisive battle. Confronting the rebels with his own Imperial armada that included his Super Star Destroyer the Executor, Vader was able to destroy a significant portion of the Rebel fleet. Although Vader wasn't able to get the victory he had hoped for, the battle nevertheless crippled the Rebellion, causing significant losses to both the Rebels' capital ships and its valued starfighters. Vader's action should have been a mortal blow to the Rebellion. However, the decimated alliance had one saving grace: the recently liberated Mon Calamari. In yesterday's video discussing Rebel Army Doctrine, we looked at the disaster of the Rebellion's Operation Domino, which would completely change Rebel ground tactics. However, one beneficial outcome of the operation was the liberation of the Mon Calamari from the grip of the Empire. The Mon Calamari had long planned to rise up against Imperial occupation. Even when their shipyards had been occupied by the Empire, Mon Cal workers implemented a secret program of rearmament. Shipyards that had been used by the Empire to build luxury liners immediately began outfitting these models for warfare upon their liberation, a plan that had always been in play for the engineers of these vessels. Almost immediately, the Mon Calamari began to produce starcruisers that were well armed with turbo laser batteries, and which had some of the best shields and targeting computers in the galaxy. These latter capabilities allowed them to have an advantage even against the Empire's star destroyers. The liberation of the Mon Calamari and the emergence of their new starcruisers couldn't have come at a better time following the disaster at Deep Space Besh. They had become an essential source for ships and supplies for the Rebellion, wherein they donated the entire strength of their navy to the Alliance. Mon Cal starcruisers became the backbone of the Rebel fleet, and Ackbar would rise to the rank of Admiral. This, of course, would completely change the fleet and starfighter doctrine of the Rebel Alliance. Ackbar shared Mon Mothma's concerns about relying solely upon starfighter raids under Starfighter Command. At the same time, Fleet Command started to emerge as the dominant force within the Alliance. These factors led to a new fleet-first strategy for the Rebellion that was codified as an executive order from Chief of State Mon Mothma, but which had in fact been drafted by Admiral Ackbar. Finally, as Mon Mothma had long desired, the Rebellion was organized into a single centralized armada that would become a beacon of the Alliance. Under Ackbar's leadership, the Rebel fleet expanded into a formidable collection of capital ships, and training programs were able to produce commanders to execute the Alliance's new doctrine, which was supplemented by a steady wave of former Imperial officers who defected. As the Mon Calamari shipyards began to mass-produce new starcruisers, frigates, and corvettes, Ackbar reorganized the fleet. Its main subdivision for both fleet maneuvers and raids was defined by the battle line, with a group of 2 or more cruisers and a subordinate close support line comprising of escorts and starfighters. In theory, a Rebel battle line would consist of at least 8 heavy cruisers, but in practice, a typical battle line comprised of 2 cruisers, a single frigate, and a single corvette. Now that the Rebellion was outfitted with a sizable fleet of capital ships, many traditionalists within the Alliance advocated that their new doctrine should include the use of this fleet to directly confront the Empire, and begin to reclaim and occupy territory under Imperial control. While this was unthinkable with their previous starfighter-focused doctrine, the fleet-first doctrine emboldened many within the Alliance. However, while these traditionalists viewed Ackbar's reorganized fleet as capable of challenging any Imperial battle squadron, Mon Mothma and Ackbar rejected these notions. Mon Mothma was particularly hostile to this plan, learning from the previous disaster of Operation Domino, and seeing the potential for the Rebellion to recreate the disaster of the Clone Wars Outer Rim sieges. Instead, the new fleet's role wouldn't be to blindly wage campaigns against the Empire. A direct confrontation would eventually come, but the Rebel fleet was instead to be a symbol of the Rebellion. It would build up its strength and fight a psychological war against the Empire, where its existence alone reduced its power and ignited the fires of rebellion across the galaxy. Where missions and actions were desirable, the fleet would dispatch a fighting force that rotated out of the fleet for the duration of its efforts. But these forces would never be more than 25% of the fleet to ensure that it continued to serve as a symbol for rebellion. Therefore, by the time of the Battle of Endor, the fleet and starfighter doctrine of the rebellion had significantly evolved from that existing in the early days of the Alliance pre-Yavin. Under Akbar, the independence once enjoyed by Starfighter Command was all but diminished, as it and the Alliance Special Forces were increasingly subordinate to the fleet. So there we have it, the evolution of the Rebellion's fleet and Starfighter Doctrine from pre-Yavin to the Battle of Endor. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive rewards and discussions. If not for me... For disaffected Imperials.